Good morning. This is the Bill Press Show, filling in for Bill today, Thursday, December 26th, the day after Christmas. I'm Karl Frisch. You can find more about me at karlfrisch.com. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter and Facebook at Karl Frisch. We've got a great show lined up for you today. Again, the day after Christmas, we'll be talking about how the President and First Lady spent their holiday and the very different messages the two parties are sending in their weekly radio addresses. We've got Republicans talking about how much they care for, get this, the poor and indigent, because they care so much. And obviously, you've got the president who spent some time with about 600 Marines in Hawaii on his Christmas day. We'll move into a discussion about the Pope and his Christmas message, which was a giant departure from his predecessors. Not once did he say that we can celebrate Christmas by talking about how evil gay people are. It was quite refreshing. We'll also talk about Obamacare enrollment figures and numbers and how things are going as people begin to get their coverage next week from Obamacare. I'm one of the millions who signed up for Obamacare this year. We'll look at how ineffective Congress was, the most ineffective Congress of all Congresses ever recorded since we started keeping track of how ineffective Congress was. And we'll also look at the gayest year in American history, 2013, when 8 states brought marriage equality to their people, when the Boy Scouts of America finally said, okay, you can be gay and be a troop, when the Salvation Army stopped discriminating against gay people, when the Pope stopped blaming gay people, and when the Senate passed the Employment Non-Discrimination Act. It has been a big year. It's going to be a big show. You won't want to miss it, so stick around. The Bill Press Show, filling in all morning. I'm Karl Frisch.
Don't look at me. Your hair's a bit frizzy today. Oh, you should pick that up. Oh, you're such a dork, loser. Here, let me help you with that. Oops.
Every day, kids witness bullying.
Oh, look. Your crush is looking at you. Poor you.
They want to help, but don't know how.
See, no one here's gonna help you, because no one
Teach your
likes
kids how to be more than a bystander. Visit stopbullying.gov.
If you drive buzzed, it could cost you around $10,000. You'll face major legal fees, major fines, and steep insurance penalties. You could lose everything. Nothing kills a buzz like getting pulled over for buzz driving, because buzz driving is drunk driving.
When some people struggle with their mortgage payments, they become frozen, petrified. Not knowing what to do, they do nothing. But the people who take action are far more likely to get the most positive outcome. Making home affordable is a free government program. Call now to talk one-on-one with a housing expert about the options that are right for you. Real help, real answers, right now.
Here at the GED Pep Talk Center, we have pep talkers standing by to get you motivated for your GED diploma. Text the name Terry to 69222 for a sympathetic pep talk.
You show people what you really are.
Or for a gentle pep talk, text the name Deborah.
You know you're going to make people very proud of you.
And if that's not enough, text the name Danny for an extreme pep talk.
Prove everyone wrong. Show them you're the boss.
Get your GED pep talk and find free GED classes. Text the name of the person you want a pep talk from to 69222.
Did you see the world differently? Did you celebrate the victory?
So today, I state clearly and with conviction America's commitment to seek the peace and security of a world without nuclear weapons.
Did you stand up against our greatest threat?
broadcasting around the nation, on your radio, on your TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to The Bill Press Show. Thursday, December 26th, the day after Christmas. I am Karl Frisch, filling in for Bill Press all morning. More about me at karlfrisch.com. Don't forget to connect with the show at billpressshow.com. Follow us on Twitter, BP Show, and connect with us on Facebook, facebook.com/BillPressShow. We've got a great show lined up for you today. Some exciting guests as well. Lauren French, a tax reporter with Politico. My good friend Tina Dupuy, the syndicated columnist. And Yahoo News national affairs reporter Liz Goodwin. So you'll want to stick around and catch all of the great conversations we have with them. And we'd love to hear from you as well. So give us a call, 866-55-PRESS. That's 866-55-77377. The president and first lady, of course, are in Hawaii. Contrary to right-wing opinion, that's where the president is from, not Kenya. And I thought we'd kick off the show by me recounting how the president spent his holiday. And I've got some pool reports right here in my hands, which you can see me waving around frantically on TawkrTV, only on YouTube. So our good friend James Rucker was on pool responsibility, which means he had the horrible assignment of going to Hawaii for the holidays. Pity him on his Twitter. So some background. On Christmas Eve, the Obamas had dinner with family and friends. The president made holiday telephone calls to U.S. service members from each branch of the military around the globe, including personnel who were wounded in an operation in South Sudan last weekend. And the morning of Christmas, the family gathered, the Obamas gathered around the Christmas tree to open gifts and sing Christmas carols. Yeah, I can only imagine how fun singing Christmas carols is on Christmas. It just sounds fake. It sounds like something that I would say about a politician if I was working for them. The president and first lady then went on to go to a Marine Corps base in Kanaho Bay in Hawaii to visit with service members and their families and to thank them for their service to the country. At about 4 in the afternoon, Hawaii time, yesterday, the pool followed the president's motorcade to Kailua, which is where the military base was, and they caught a glimpse of the president in his SUV. He then spoke to 580 troops, just about 600, in their chow hall. Let's take a listen to what he had to say.
Michelle and I know that we would not enjoy the freedoms we do if it weren't for the incredible dedication and professionalism and work that you do. The least we can do is just let you all know that we're grateful to you.
So that's the president. He spoke there. And then he stuck around for like 2.5 hours taking photos with every single member of the Marine Corps that was there. Quite a touching move for the president on his Christmas day, no doubt. The president then returned to his vacation home, and the media was promptly told to take a hike. So that was the end of the pool report. There was, of course, the annual presidential radio address and Republican response. Let's take a listen to the president's a portion of the president's radio address about what it means for the holiday season.
To love our neighbors as we love ourselves, to feed the hungry and look after the sick, to be our brother's keeper and our sister's keeper.
And obviously the president striking a tone of what Christmas means to him and his family, and striking a tone of what the reason for the season actually is. Let's hear what the Republican response was. This is Senator Frisch, who you've probably never heard of, but he was the Republican representative this week.
Let's also remember those who do not have significant means, those who live on shoestring budgets or even less, and may not be able to easily provide for their needs or fill their tables.
Now, you'll notice that Senator Frisch says, let's remember them. He doesn't say let's do anything for them, because far be it for any Republican representative to show any kind of compassion or empathy on Christmas. Let's just remember them. It's kind of like Mr. Burns remembers the homeless and indigent from his lair on top of the mountain. It makes them feel good inside to know that they've got it so much better than others. You might be asking yourself, how did other Republicans spend their holidays? And I'm glad you asked, because I've got this great report from Politico, or from Huffington Post rather, about Steve King, your favorite right-wing crazy person and mine, congressman from the great state of Iowa. The headline reads, and this is not a joke, this is not an article from The Onion or some other parody site. It reads, Steve King eats reindeer for Christmas. So you know Dasher and Dancer and Comet and Cupid are really delicious, apparently, to Steve King. He grilled up some reindeer. He told CNN that it was totally normal, considering that he's from Norwegian stock, where they have a robust wild reindeer population. I wonder if the little red light from Rudolph's nose glows in his stomach, and he sees it at night as he's trying to sleep and think about how he's going to screw the poor even more. He says that's sustainably raised food, though, so he's got that going for him. So there you have it, folks. You've got how Republicans spent their holiday. They said that they were thinking about the poor while they ate their reindeer. I can't think of a more clear message to be sending. Of course, it was also a time for praising the troops, which the president did during his radio address. Let's take a listen to that as well. President praising the troops.
Today, we want all our troops to know that you're in our thoughts and prayers this holiday season. And here's the good news. For many of our troops and newest veterans, this might be the first time in years that they've been with their families on Christmas.
So the president has spent a lot of time talking about the needy and folks that don't have, didn't have much for the holidays. And conservatives are up in arms over what they're calling a Christmas tree tax, positively hysterical. I've got this piece here from The Hill, and it reads, Christmas tree farmers have renewed their push for the creation of a marketing and research program that conservative critics have dubbed the Christmas tree tax. You know what that means. This is just further evidence of a war on Christmas. Thank God that's over, by the way, right? We only have to wait until October when they start it again. The U.S. Department of Agriculture in 2011 moved to create a marketing and research program for Christmas trees that would have been similar to the Got Milk campaign or the Pork, the Other White Meat campaign. I can only imagine why anybody would need to be convinced to buy a Christmas tree if they don't already buy a Christmas tree. What's the message going to be from the government to Jews and Muslims? Get it on the fun. Cut a tree off. I've often wondered what people, like if an alien came back to Earth a week after Christmas and just took a walk down some American urban city and saw Christmas trees, just weird pine trees with no roots, lining the sidewalk all over the place. That would be very strange. It'd be like seeing a forest of clear-cut trees with no apparent rhyme or reason, maybe a little tinsel in the branches. So, of course, Republicans are saying that this would amount to like a Christmas tree tax. It's actually quite funny, though, because if it's Republicans that are against it, then I guess you could say that they're waging the war on Christmas since they don't want to spread the cheer of the season and let folks know that they should be buying trees. I imagine, though, that the government would probably kick this off around Labor Day, so we'd be celebrating Christmas even earlier than we already do around Halloween, which would be quite unfortunate. So we'll see if that ends up going anywhere. Something they've been pushing for a number of years. I can't imagine it going anywhere in particular. Certainly not anywhere as quickly as a feast of reindeer over the holidays might go in Steve King's household. I can only imagine what sides they had: mashed elf and Brussels sprouts, maybe. Perhaps they melted snowmen in their goblets of the blood of poor people before they chowed down on their Rudolph and everything else. This is Bill Press Show. All morning I'll be with you. Karl Frisch here, and stick around. We've got more great talk coming to you. 866-55-PRESS. That's 866-557-7377. The Bill Press Show. Karl Frisch. We'll be back in just a minute.
Seen on Free Speech TV and online on TawkrTV. This is the Bill Press Show.
A single ember that escapes from a wildfire can travel more than a mile. That single ember can ignite and destroy your home or even your community. You can't control where that ember will land, only what happens when it does. Get Fire Adapted now at fireadapted.org.
Columbine, Virginia Tech,
Tucson,
Aurora,
Fort Hood, Oak Creek,
Newtown.
Newtown,
Newtown.
Newtown.
How many more?
How many more? How many more colleges? How many more classrooms?
How many more movie theaters?
How many more houses of faith?
How many more shopping malls?
How many more street corners?
How many more?
How many more?
Enough.
Enough. Enough.
Enough.
Demand a plan.
Right now. As a mom.
As a dad. As a friend. As a husband.
As a wife.
As an American.
As an American.
As an American.
As a human being.
For the children of Sandy Hook.
Demand a plan. No more lists of names. It's not too soon.
It's too late.
Now is the time.
Before we all know someone who loved someone on that list.
No more lists.
No more.
Who they might have been. No more.
If we had just done something yesterday. It's time.
We can do better than this.
We can do better than this.
It's time.
It's time.
It's time for our leaders to act.
Demand a plan. Right now.
Right now.
You! Demand it!
Enough.
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 None of us would want to be told we can't marry the person we love. As Americans, we believe in freedom. That's what I fought for as a Marine, and that's what we believe in as Republicans. Freedom means freedom for everyone. I didn't used to understand the importance of same-sex marriage, but after learning my brother was gay, I wanted the same rights for him. He was the best man at my wedding, and I want to be the best man at his. It's only fair that Calvin should have the freedom to marry the person he loves, too.
It's time for marriage.
At Earth Justice, we defend the environment in the courtroom. Join our fight. When you take a seat, you take a stand. Earth Justice, because the Earth needs a good lawyer.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. You know, but it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, you know, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
Seen on Free Speech TV and online on TawkrTV. This is the Bill Press Show.
Welcome back. This is the Bill Press Show. Filling in all morning, I'm Karl Frisch. Follow me on Twitter and Facebook at Karl Frisch. So if you're just joining us, we're talking a little bit, rounding out the holidays with what little we can get from what happened yesterday, the President and First Lady's holiday. We'll be getting to the Pope in just a second. But I thought we could review this handy guide from Media Matters of right-wing Christmas gifts being offered by the likes of places like WorldNet Daily. As you know, conservatives in the media spend a lot of time and energy trying to wring money out of their followers between conservative publications that use their email list to scam subscribers with dubious health advice, and the conservative radio hosts who pitch precious metals to their listeners, and the symbiotic relationship that exists between right-wing pundits and conservative nonprofits and activist groups. It's all but certain that at any given moment, some overly credulous right-leaning American are throwing good money at bad investments. Take a listen to some of the things that are being sold. The Faraday cage, which costs $1,499, available at WorldNet Daily, so WND.com. Of course, you're thinking, what is the Faraday cage? It is dozens of articles over the years warning its readers of an impending attack on the U.S., possibly by Iran, North Korea, or Cuba, with an electromagnetic pulse weapon that could leave 9 out of 10 Americans dead. The Faraday cage, manufactured specifically for WorldNet Daily, will ensure that your electronics will survive the devastating EMP attack, even if you don't. Frightening. But if you're wondering, how will my genitals survive? They've got that covered too, because they also sell Super Male Vitality. A steal at just $69.95. Super Male Vitality uses the science of modern day technology to keep you from losing, quote unquote, vitality, energy, sexual drive, and overall wellness. Alex Jones, noted racist and internet conspiracy theory provocateur, himself attests to the facts that Super Male Vitality is, quote, literally an infusion of the highest quality sources of naturally derived essences. I just can't. I don't know what to say. It comes in a 2-ounce bottle. Remember when you were a kid and they had those little droppers? That's how you give it to yourself, was with a little dropper, like you're feeding a little birdie. Frightening. And then, of course, they've got books. Now, some of these books are just amazing. So there's The Lennon Prophecy, which is also sold at WorldNet Daily. And that argues that John Lennon may well have sold his soul to the devil, and that his assassination was merely Satan collecting his due. Oddly enough, not sold under fiction. Frightening. They've also got, they sold their souls for rock and roll, a 10-hour DVD about musicians, but it's a companion piece to the Lennon Prophecy about musicians who sold their souls to the devil. Of course, they've also got a Ronald Reagan joke CD. If you haven't, had your fill of Reagan, the Gipper. And then, of course, what Christmas would be complete without a Harry Potter throw-up? They've got a book called Harry Potter, Witchcraft Repackaged. Craziness. And these are from the same people that sell survival seeds and all the other junk gold that you could possibly buy. But brighter silver linings around the clouds of right-wingdom. At this time of the year, I'm used to the Pope giving his holiday mass and saying, Merry Christmas, everybody, and gay people are evil. But that's not what the Pope did this time. Pope Francis offered his Christmas wishes Wednesday for a better world, praying for the protection of Christians under attack, battered women, and trafficked children, peace in the Middle East and Africa, and dignity for refugees fleeing misery and conflict around the globe. Francis delivered the traditional speech from the central balcony at St. Peter's Basilica to more than 70,000 cheering tourists, pilgrims, and Romans in the square below. In his first Christmas message since being elected pontiff in March, he asked for all of us to share in the song of Christmas angels for every man or woman who hopes for a better world, who cares for others. Among places ravaged by conflict, Francis singled out Syria, which saw its third Christmas during civil war, South Sudan, the Central African Republic, Nigeria, and Iraq. So it's quite an interesting message. Let's take a little listen to it.
Buongiorno e buon Natale.
I don't know what buongiorno, I believe, is hello. I could be wrong. I don't speak Italian, and unlike the sign language interpreter at Nelson Mandela's funeral, I'm not even going to pretend to try and translate. The 77-year-old Pope kept it simple in style that he's set for his papacy. Wearing a plain white cassock, Francis presented a sharp contrast in appearance to the Pope, who stood on the same balcony on Christmas exactly a year ago. Then Benedict the 16th, who was soon to stun the world by retiring, read his Christmas speech while dressing in a crimson cape. Benedict lives on the Vatican grounds, and Francis paid a holiday call on him earlier this week. In another break with tradition, the Argentinian Pope Francis stuck to Italian rather than giving a holiday greeting in a bunch of different languages. I don't know how, frankly, the Pope, his message that is being considered kind of groundbreaking is going to fare with the GOP when you think about it. I mean, it is directly contrary to their talking points. And what's fascinating to me, I mean, you think back to years where popes or cardinals and bishops have denied communion to pro-choice and pro-gay legislators, and you wonder if they will now take up a line of denying communion to basically every Republican Catholic because they haven't done anything for the poor and needy. I can't see that happening anytime soon, considering that they've often just allowed pro-war Catholics to accept communion. But it's certainly something interesting. You've got people like Rush Limbaugh and others attacking the Pope as being some kind of a socialist plant. It certainly opens the possibility to some kind of conflict there. This is the Bill Press Show, so you'll want to stick around and stay with us, and we'll be back in just a bit with more.
This is the Bill Press Show.
This is my computer.
Get an amazing deal from Office Max. Purchase.
Click it.
Yes.
Okay.
Eye cursor in between the R and the E. Pressing down, I want you to just push the area.
She's gonna love me all over again.
That's it. Jamaica, here you go.
Here we go.
Good job.
Thank you. Thank you. And I did it by myself. Feel smarter.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. You know, but it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, you know, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
So, same time next week?
Well, of course. Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free tips to help you save, go to Feed the Pig.
All right. I know this isn't any fun to talk about, but we should. Okay. So who's going to do what?
I'll pack the dead batteries.
Great.
I'll only put what I don't need into a duffel bag.
Perfect. That's totally unhelpful.
No problem.
Meanwhile, I will try to comfort everyone by speaking in a calm voice.
And I'll try to get the generator going without any gas.
Oh, let's not forget the cell phones, which probably won't work.
Right.
And who is going to handle supplies?
I can forget to do a list for us.
Thanks, pal.
Well, I think we couldn't be any less prepared. I'm proud of you guys.
Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
Hey, thanks for stopping by. You know, I followed your character since the first episode. I'm a big fan. Big fan.
Thank you.
And listen, your storyline, it makes for incredible TV drama. Thing is, your drug use is very adult content. Too adult for the kids. So I'm gonna have to block you.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Well, have a good one.
You're a nice lady.
Connect with The Bill Press Show on Twitter. Follow us at BP Show and tweet using the hashtag WatchingBP. This is The Bill Press Show.
Welcome back. Bill Press Show filling in. I'm Karl Frisch all morning. You can also follow me on Twitter if you want to, at Karl Frisch. That's at KarlFrisch. So about a week ago, I signed up for Obamacare. I went online here in D.C. at the D.C. Health Exchange, filled out what was on paper probably would have been about one-page questionnaire, picked my plan, picked my dental plan, and was done, was signed up. And I'm not alone. As you are likely well aware, Monday of this week was the deadline for most residents in most states to sign up for Obamacare if they want coverage starting January 1st. I did, so I signed up. It's a big deal for two big reasons. Most Americans will be required to have some kind of health insurance in 2014 or face a fine when they file their taxes. There's also a lot riding on it politically for the president. Monday will be a key test. Monday was a key test for President Obama's administration's attempt to overhaul the country's healthcare system. So, consult your state. Some deadlines are not quite here, depending on where you live. But we're seeing really big numbers among people who have signed up. My understanding is that more than 3 million people visited the Federal Exchange's website, healthcare.gov, the day of the day of the deadline. And that millions of people have signed up. So we'll probably be getting hard numbers on that fairly soon once folks start paying for their plans and whatnot. A lot of exchanges are not accepting payments online anymore. So you've had to call your insurer once you've signed up to make payments. So it's probably going to be weeks before we get final numbers, but it's nonetheless causing a lot of political problems for Republicans. We'd love to hear your thoughts on Obamacare. Give us a call, 866-55-PRESS. That's 866-557-7377. Republicans in 2014 midterm elections are trying to use Obamacare as a way to capitalize on frustrations with the quote-unquote problem-plagued healthcare overhaul. And it's leading to a lot of intra-party skirmishes, which I'm sure some of you are seeing play out. Where in places like Georgia and Kentucky and Texas, where right-wing senators are being challenged by even further right-wing Tea Party lunatic crazy people And sorry, that's just the technical term for it. Tea Party lunatic crazy people is a clinical term. And because they're not being tough enough on Obamacare, as if voting, 30 times to repeal Obamacare, if shutting down the government wasn't enough. Absolutely crazy. You take a look at Georgia, where Republican Congressman Jack Kingston wants to succeed retiring Republican Senator Saxby Chambliss, who stepped aside. He says a lot of conservatives say, nah, just step back and let this thing fall to pieces on its own. Kingston said, well, I don't think that's always the responsible thing to do. And of course, that has just opened up a line of attack by another congressman in Georgia named Paul Brown, one of Kingston's rivals, who has said, I don't want to fix Obamacare. I want to get rid of it. And of course, cue the right-wing lunatic fringe Tea Party clapping and applause. Ah, yay. He's so tough and masculine and butch. Absolutely craziness. And then in Tennessee, Lamar Alexander, a man that I worked for in a former life as a Republican, is being primaried as well by a Tennessee state rep named Joe Carr, who has blasted Alexander, saying that he hasn't done enough. And of course, we're all familiar with the state of Kentucky, where you've got the Senate Minority Leader, Mitch McConnell, being challenged on his right and his left. And what's interesting about Kentucky is that Obamacare is going really, really well in Kentucky, regardless of how difficult Mitch McConnell or Rand Paul have tried to make it for the state. The state has signed up people left and right. It's gangbusters signing people up for health coverage in the Kentucky Exchange in Kentucky. And yet, Mitch McConnell is still being primaried from his right by a Tea Party crazy person. And again, that's just a clinical term for them. By a Tea Party crazy person who thinks that Mitch McConnell, a man who said that his number one priority was to defeat President Obama, not to do anything legislatively, a man who has stood in the way as much as possible to stop Obamacare from implementation, that he's not doing enough. And consequently, what ends up happening is that some of these folks that are reasonably rational end up, becoming even more conservative as the result. And that's exactly what these big special interests know, is that if they primary these folks, they'll become reactionary. Just look at Lindsey Graham, noted confirmed bachelor out of South Carolina. He has become extremely conservative on all sorts of issues to fend off a primary challenge. We've got Don in Napa. Good morning, Don.
Hi, Bill. How are you today?
Well, I'm not Bill, but Bill is probably asleep on his Christmas vacation right now. I'm Karl.
Sorry.
How are you, Don?
You're filling in. Okay. What was your first name?
Karl.
Karl, thanks. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you.
Anyway, there's no, I want to start a movement with this Barack Obama or this affordable health care thing. There is no dental anything. So I want to send the
There's
rally
no
cry.
what?
No dental.
Okay.
No dental plan. No.
I had dental plans in my offerings.
In the Obamacare thing, you did dental plans?
Yep, on the DC exchange, I had options for health care and dental care.
Okay, well, that's different. Okay.
Where do you live, Don? You're in California?
Yeah.
I'm surprised they haven't put anything out there. Dental care, though, is a lot more affordable than health care. I think my plan, and it's not subsidized, Delta Dental, I think I'm paying $23 a month for it. So perhaps that's why it's not listed, because you can go to virtually any dental insurer's website and sign up on the spot. It's not too much like health insurance, but putting it in one place would be a good thing.
Anyway, Karl, can I ask a question?
Sure.
What is the fine if you don't, and if you're poor and you don't have an income more than $13,000, then what?
Then you get subsidies from the government, and I think the fine if you don't sign up is 1% of your income or something like that. I'm not entirely sure. I don't routinely investigate fines that I'm not going to end up paying, because I did sign up. But if you are poor and you meet certain requirements, the government will help pay for it. And in a lot of cases, people have been qualified for Medicare or Medicaid. So you've got a lot of people enrolling in health coverage that way as well.
A little political commentary. why should everyone sign up for mental health insurance?
Not everybody is signing up for mental health insurance. They're signing up for health insurance.
But everyone should sign up for mental health insurance.
Why should everybody sign up for coverage that fixes a stubbed toe or a broken arm? Not everybody's going to break an arm.
The whole nation is mentally ill until there's a trial for John Lennon's killer. We're waiting.
All right. He must have read that book that WND offers, the Lennon conspiracy. We're all mentally ill until John Lennon's killer is given a trial. You heard it here first. Again, we'd love to hear your thoughts on Obamacare, no matter how interesting they may be. Give us a call, 866-55-PRESS, and we'll take your call after this break. Stick around.
Joe. Seen on Free Speech TV and online on TawkrTV. This is the Bill Press Show.
It is possible to read the history of this country as one long struggle to extend the liberties established in our Constitution to everyone in America. In other words, who, according to our laws and culture, gets to be considered a person? The law creates legal personhood, and movements create law and change culture. So, how have the courts passed laws to shape our culture? That history goes way back before Citizens United. 1819, Dartmouth College versus Woodward, Supreme Court case, turned a corporate charter from a government-granted charter to a contract. This ruling gave corporations standing within the Constitution. 1886, Santa Clara County versus Southern Pacific Railroad. Though the court did not rule on corporate personhood, the decision was subsequently cited as a precedent to hold that a private corporation is entitled to the same 14th Amendment rights of due process and equal protection as human beings. This makes it impossible for us to make laws that treat local businesses any differently than giant multinational corporations, even if their business practices are deemed to be harmful to workers, the environment and communities, or if they have a history of violating the law. Hale versus Henkel, 1906. The court granted corporations the Fourth Amendment search and seizure protection. Dodge versus Ford Motor Company, 1919. The Michigan Supreme Court says the business corporation is organized and carried on primarily for the profit of the stockholders. Stockholder primacy is established. The purpose of the corporation, according to the court, is no longer to serve the public good, as it had been. It is now to maximize profit for shareholders above all else. Pennsylvania Coal Company versus Mahon, 1922. Corporations get the Fifth Amendment takings clause, meaning if you pass a regulation that impacts a corporation's ability to make a profit, that is deemed a taking, and they can sue for the right to future profits lost. This creates a chilling effect, and local and state governments become much more hesitant to pass laws in the public interest for fear that corporations can claim loss of potential profits that cities and states will be on the hook to pay. Buckley versus Vallejo, 1976. The Supreme Court rules that spending money to influence elections is protected under the First Amendment, in effect saying that money is speech. Citizens United versus Federal Election Commission, 2010.
Today, the Supreme Court of Chief Justice John Roberts declared that because of the alchemy of its 19th century predecessors in deciding that corporations had all the rights of people, any restrictions on how these corporate beings spend their money on political advertising are unconstitutional.
The court's ruling threatens to undermine the integrity of elected institutions across the nation. It's a rejection of the common sense of the American people.
On your radio, on TV, and online. This is the Bill Press Show.
Welcome back. This is the Bill Press Show, filling in for Bill on this Thursday, December 26th, the day after Christmas. I'm Karl Frisch. More about me at karlfrisch.com. We're taking your calls. We've been talking about Obamacare, and in just a matter of about 6 days, millions of Americans will have access to health insurance for the first time, some of them in years. Erica in Chicago. Erica?
Hey, good morning.
Eric. Sorry about
good
that.
Morning. No problem. Good morning.
Good morning.
Now, I have a question. My sister lives in the great state of Indiana.
Yes.
And their governor opted out of the Affordable Care Act. So does that mean...
Well, not entirely. They're not allowed to opt out of the Affordable Care Act. What they've done in some of these states is they've opted to not set up an exchange themselves. So if they do that, then anybody who lives in that state, they can get coverage through the federal exchange. And what the exchange is just a website that offers people a bunch of different health plans to choose from.
So, in other words, then, any business that's operating in the state of Indiana, they still have to offer their employees some type of...
Not any business. Under the Affordable Care Act, I think it's 49, any business with 49 or more employees. I don't think... It's not every business. It's any business with more than 49 employees. Everybody's required to have insurance, and obviously, it's based on a person's income. So if they're not making much money, they'll get a hefty amount of support from the government to pay for their insurance themselves.
And just one more thing, these fast food workers, they do a great job. They barely make enough to make ends meet. Will they get the option to have affordable health care also?
Yes. They, if they are making a certain amount of money, they'll get government support to buy health insurance wherever they happen to live. Although I'm not certain how a place like McDonald's, for example, will deal with the Affordable Care Act, since they obviously have well more than 49 employees. So we'll see where that ends up going. But again, it's quite controversial out there on the campaign trail. It's controversial on both sides. I was talking earlier in the show about how right-wingers are eating their own over what they consider to be a lack of aggressive opposition to the Affordable Care Act. And on the left, you've got some politicians whose futures are in jeopardy based on their lackluster implementation of the Affordable Care Act. We have to look no further than Maryland, which is not far from where we are right now here in our nation's capital. The troubles hitting the Maryland Health Exchange could have a lasting impact. This is the Baltimore Sun reporting, by tarnishing the political image of Governor Martin O'Malley and his handpicked successor, Lieutenant Governor Anthony G. Brown, according to experts assessing the 2014 campaign and beyond. For O'Malley, this is a guy who wants to run for president. Having trouble implementing the Affordable Care Act in a state that is dominated by Democrats is a very bad sign, to be sure. And for Anthony Brown, who's in a competitive three-way primary with Doug Gansler, the state's attorney general, and Heather Mazur, who I am a big fan of, the state representative, and who would be the first woman governor of Maryland and the first openly lesbian governor in the country. He's on the commission that's responsible for implementing the Affordable Care Act. So it could be a big problem for him, too. They've had all kinds of problems. Maryland's $107 million online insurance marketplace crashed on its launch on October 1st. No surprises there. Performance has improved in recent weeks, with 11,700 people having enrolled in private insurance plans as of December 21st. But the exchange remains well below the goal of enrolling 150,000 people by the end of March. So they've got a lot of work to do if they want to catch up with the rest of the country. And so a lot of people are going to have a great Christmas present beginning on January 1st. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, what did Tom Hanks get his wife for Christmas? And what did he want for Christmas? And that's what we call in the radio business a segue. Let's hear some audio of Tom Hanks talking about what he would get his wife for Christmas.
I don't know. I'll go the toaster oven route, but a really cool toaster oven. I mean, like a one that you can just set. It's automatic. Maybe a rice cooker, the kind, because she's handy in the kitchen, boy. That wife of mine.
I think a toaster oven is an excellent gift, and that was not sexist at all. Not at all. And what did he want for Christmas?
I could use some running pants.
Some running pants. So I hope that if he got his wife a rice cooker and a toaster oven, that he got at least one pair of running pants. I over the holiday, this little break I've been on, I managed to see one of his holiday movies, the Saving Mr. Banks. If you've not seen it, is a fantastic movie. And it's the story of the author of Mary Poppins. It's absolutely fantastic. I'm not sure exactly how Disney thought it'd be a good idea to release a movie for the holidays that talks explicitly about child abuse and alcoholism under the Disney brand, but it's fantastic nonetheless. It's the Bill Press Show. Stick around. More after this.
Connect with the Bill Press Show on Twitter. Follow us at BP Show and tweet using the hashtag WatchingBP. This is the Bill Press Show.
In 1920s America, the Great Depression effectively erased consumer demand. Struggling manufacturers needed new ways to get people buying again. Innovative production processes like stamping and use of molds allowed them to use new materials for their designs. Products using vinyl, chrome, aluminium and plywood began appearing. American industrial designers began introducing streamlined, efficient shapes that shouted progress. Bel Geddes pioneered what we now refer to as utilitarian art. Things that had little reason to look sleek, now all of a sudden did. At the 1939 World Fair featuring Bel Geddes' immensely popular Futurama exhibit, a new era of American industrial design proudly claimed to be building the world of tomorrow. Americans found great positivity in these futuristic forms. Yay. Things were looking up. American industrial designers realised that by making objects look great, people simply wanted them more. From cars to kitchen appliances, the most influential society on earth was spending money again. Mass consumption had arrived. Advertisers finally had lots to talk about. Personal taste could be expressed through the things you bought. Style became equally as important as function. Chair designers like Eames and Saarinen didn't just design seating, they created desirable lifestyles. People behind the product suddenly were stars. Everyone wanted to know who they were. Raymond Loewy was one of the shining lights of American industrial design. His face ended up on every coffee table in the nation. Toothpaste packaging promised whiter teeth. Washing powder packaging promised whiter whites. Who knew such simple household objects would shape the tastes and ambitions of an entire society? American industrial design improved America, functionally, culturally and intellectually, and exported it around the globe.
You wouldn't let money just blow out of your house. So when your AC or heater is on, make sure the doors, windows, and fireplace flue are shut tight. If you're headed out, turn down the AC. Or lower the heat by 10 degrees. And always keep your water heater set at 120. A little bit of common sense goes a long way. Get more great tips at energysaver.gov.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. You know, but it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, you know, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
On your radio, on TV, and online. This is the Bill Press Show.
Welcome back. Bill Press Show all morning on Karl Frisch, 55 after. So, a lot of the time, at this time of the year, we like to look back and think, how could we have done better? I'm sure that's what Congress is thinking right now collectively. But let's take a look and see what they happen to do this year. So, the Do Nothing Congress of the 80th Congress, it was 1952, I believe. They passed 906 pieces of legislation. And that was the Do Nothing Congress of 1947 to 1948. And the 80th Congress. So 906 pieces of legislation passed into law, and they're called the Do Nothing Congress. the 113th Congress, which is 2013, they passed 65 pieces of legislation. So if the Do-Nothing Congress passes almost 1,000, and the Republican Congress, the 113th Congress, passes 65, I wonder what we should call them. Not only that, Republican majority this year, you might be asking yourself, how many days did they actually work? It's actually easier to count the days that they didn't work, because there's a lot more of them. They scheduled 239 days off in 2013. Oh, what I would give to have 239 days off in any given year. They also, in the days that they did work, they actually had the third longest government shutdown on record. Now, that's kind of a sticky wicket to say, because it's actually the second longest government shutdown on record. Only 2 times has the government completely shut down, and that was when Republicans first took control of Congress in 1995, after not having the majority for 50 years, and when they took control this time around and shut down the government. All the other times before that, pieces of the government had been shut down, so maybe the Republicans and Democrats couldn't agree on one spending bill, so they might shut down the Department of Agriculture for a week until they figured out what to do. But never before Republicans started taking control of Congress had they shut down the entire government. So that, my friends, is your Republican Congress at work, being the most ineffective body ever. If they are the Do-Nothing Congress, if there was the Do-Nothing Congress of 47 passing 1,000 pieces of legislation, and this Congress passing just 65, perhaps we should be calling them the Deadbeat Congress, because they just can't do anything. And I can only imagine how many of those 65 pieces of legislation passed this year were attempts to repeal Obamacare, or the naming of a post office. In the next hour, we're going to talk about the gayest year on record, 2013, and talk to our good friend Lauren French, tax reporter at Politico. Stick around. We'll be back after this.
This is the Bill Press Show.
You wouldn't let money just blow out of your house. So when your AC or heater is on, make sure the doors, windows, and fireplace flue are shut tight. If you're headed out, turn down the AC. Or lower the heat by 10 degrees. And always keep your water heater set at 120. A little bit of common sense goes a long way. Get more great tips at energysaver.gov.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
Good morning. This is the Bill Press Show, filling in for Bill today, Thursday, December 26th, the day after Christmas. I'm Karl Frisch. You can find more about me at karlfrisch.com. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter and Facebook at Karl Frisch. We've got a great show lined up for you today. Again, the day after Christmas, we'll be talking about how the President and First Lady spent their holiday and the very different messages the two parties are sending in their weekly radio addresses. We've got Republicans talking about how much they care for, get this, the poor and indigent, because they care so much. And obviously you've got the president, who spent some time with about 600 Marines in Hawaii on his Christmas day. We'll move into a discussion about the Pope and his Christmas message, which was a giant departure from his predecessors. Not once did he say that we can celebrate Christmas by talking about how evil gay people are. It was quite refreshing. We'll also talk about Obamacare enrollment figures and numbers and how things are going as people begin to get their coverage next week from Obamacare. I'm one of the millions who signed up for Obamacare this year. We'll look at how ineffective Congress was, the most ineffective Congress of all Congresses ever recorded since we started keeping track of how ineffective Congress was. And we'll also look at the gayest year in American history, 2013, when 8 states brought marriage equality to their people, when the Boy Scouts of America finally said, okay, you can be gay and be a troop, when the Salvation Army stopped discriminating against gay people, when the Pope stopped blaming gay people, and when the Senate passed the Employment Non-Discrimination Act. It has been a big year. It's going to be a big show. You won't want to miss it, so stick around. The Bill Press Show, filling in all morning. I'm Karl Frisch.
Don't look at me. Your hair's a bit frizzy today. Oh, you should pick that up. Oh, you're such a dork, loser. Here, let me help you with that. Oops.
Every day, kids witness bullying.
Oh, look. Your crush is looking at you. Poor you.
They want to help, but don't know how.
See, no one here's gonna help you, because no one
Teach your
likes
kids how to be more than a bystander. Visit stopbullying.gov.
If you drive buzzed, it could cost you around $10,000. You'll face major legal fees, major fines, and steep insurance penalties. You could lose everything. Nothing kills a buzz like getting pulled over for buzz driving, because buzz driving is drunk driving.
When some people struggle with their mortgage payments, they become frozen, petrified. Not knowing what to do, they do nothing. But the people who take action are far more likely to get the most positive outcome. Making home affordable is a free government program. Call now to talk one-on-one with a housing expert about the options that are right for you. Real help, real answers, right now.
Here at the GED Pep Talk Center, we have pep talkers standing by to get you motivated for your GED diploma. Text the name Terry to 69222 for a sympathetic pep talk.
You show people what you really are.
Or for a gentle pep talk, text the name Deborah.
You know you're going to make people very proud of you.
And if that's not enough, text the name Danny for an extreme pep talk.
Prove everyone wrong. Show them you're the boss.
Get your GED pep talk and find free GED classes. Text the name of the person you want a pep talk from to 69222.
Did you see the world differently? Did you celebrate the victory?
So today, I state clearly and with conviction America's commitment to seek the peace and security of a world without nuclear weapons.
Did you stand up against our greatest threat? Change the world.
Connect with The Bill Press Show on Twitter. Follow us at BP Show and tweet using the hashtag WatchingBP. This is The Bill Press Show.
Welcome back. This is The Bill Press Show, filling in all morning. I'm Karl Frisch's Bill. Is hopefully getting some rest this holiday season, although knowing him, he's probably running around instead of sleeping like a normal human being. You can find more about me at karlfrisch.com. Also follow me on Twitter and Facebook at Karl Frisch. We've been chatting about the year that was and the year that will be in 2014. 2013 was the gayest year ever. And I know what you're saying. You're saying, Karl, wasn't 1822 the gayest year ever? And I know what you mean, but no. 2013, the gayest year ever. So let's take a look back at the year that was in marriage equality and other issues. Marriage equality in particular was a big year. At the beginning of the year, at the beginning of 2013, there were only 9 states and the District of Columbia that allowed marriage equality in the United States. And by the way, it took 10 years to get to the point where 9 states granted marriage equality. And at the end of last year, states like Maine and Washington and Maryland all passed initiatives in the November elections of 2012 to grant marriage equality. So at the beginning of 2013, those states became the first of the year to grant marriage equality: Maine, Washington, Maryland, and then Minnesota, a state that in 2012 rejected an attempt to enshrine anti-same-sex marriage discrimination in the Constitution in the 2012 election, and just a few years before that passed a ban on marriage equality. The state of Minnesota passed marriage equality, as did the state of Rhode Island. And in June, the United States Supreme Court threw out a key provision of the Defense of Marriage Act and decided not to act on lower court rulings that struck down Proposition 8, which brought marriage equality back to the state of California. And since then, we've seen states like New Mexico, New Jersey, and friggin' Utah bring marriage equality about. So, in 1 year's time, remember, it took 10 years from 2003 to 2013 for 9 states to grant marriage equality. 2003 is when Massachusetts became the first. In 2013 alone, that number was doubled to 18 states granting marriage equality and the District of Columbia. It's certainly been a giant year for marriage equality, and it, in large part, was playing out over the holidays. If you live in the state of Utah, so if you were paying attention and not wrapping presents and opening presents and stuffing yourself with ham and turkey, Utah, just before the holidays, became the 18th state to recognize marriage equality. And they did so in quite dramatic fashion. A judge, a 10th Circuit judge, said that Utah's amendment to the Constitution, which was passed by voters, I believe it was Amendment 3, was unconstitutional because it didn't provide equal justice under the law, and a number of other reasons. It was a fairly sweeping decision. And then the Republican governor and Republican state attorney general decided to appeal. So they appealed to the 10th Circuit Court, and their appeal for an emergency stay, which would have basically said that until we get this matter settled and all the appeals are exhausted, no marriage equality will be in Utah until then. Because at that point, once the judge had struck down the ban, gay couples started lining up at county clerk's offices in Utah all over the state to get married. And so that first attempt at getting a stay to stop these gay marriages was killed. And the second attempt was killed. And the third attempt was killed. And on Christmas Eve, they went back again to try and deny marriage to same-sex couples. And they were denied yet again. And now you've got the governor and attorney general appealing this decision all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. And what happens is when the 10th Circuit decides on something and it's appealed, or when somebody's wanting a stay to halt these marriages, it goes directly to one specific Supreme Court justice. And in this case, that Supreme Court justice is Sonia Sotomayor. And she has two choices. She can either ask the entire Supreme Court to decide on whether or not there will be a stay granted or not, or she can decide on her own. Now, if you're like me, you're hoping that Sonia Sotomayor will look at the facts of the case and decide the same way that the lower courts have, that there's no reason to stop gay couples from being married while this works its way through the courts. In fact, it's harmful to gay couples to keep them from marrying while this is going on. One of the interesting numbers I heard, and I haven't seen this confirmed yet, but I trust the source that told me, I've just not looked for it, that in the few days this week that marriage equality has been going, so I guess it was Thursday and Friday of last week, and then Monday and Tuesday of this week, and then again this morning, about 1,000 couples in Utah have already filed for marriage licenses. Absolutely huge numbers out of the state of Utah, especially if you consider what else they could have been doing in the run-up to the holidays. And if you want to talk the biggest Grinch this holiday season, it's got to be the Republican governor and attorney general of Utah, who decided to spend their holidays denying basic human dignity to LGBT couples in their home state. One of the most conservative states in the country, to be sure. It's the home of the Church of Latter-day Saints, the Mormons. And they put out a fairly weak press statement about this, kind of just saying, oh, we support traditional marriage, blah, blah. It wasn't nasty or negative at all. It wasn't what you'd expect from a church. Although, I guess if you think about how they were covered following Proposition 8 in California, where they just invested millions of dollars into denying marriage equality, they probably wanted to keep a low profile. So it has been an absolutely huge year for marriage equality in 2013. 2014 and going forward, it's going to be less clear and less likely that we're going to see another 9 or 10 states, unless there's a huge sweeping court decision, because we're now running up to the point where most states that could easily grant marriage equality have. You're left with 30-some states that have state constitutional amendments enshrined in their constitutions that deny marriage equality. Or as this piece from HuffPost notes, so I've already gone through that in the 6 months since the decision of the Supreme Court, we've gone from 12 to 18 states with marriage equality. But there's no clear path forward. You've got certain states that have cases working their way through, like Utah, of course, which is already granting marriage equality. In Ohio, where a federal judge, has said that if a gay couple is married, then it has to be noted on a death certificate. It was a fairly sweeping decision with a very refined scope. So we could see that precedent built off of. And then there's places like Nevada and Colorado and maybe Oregon that we might see some movement. But you've got 30-some states that have 28 states have constitutional prohibitions of same-sex marriage. Another 4 states, Indiana, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and Wyoming, do not permit marriage equality through state law. Attorneys and proponents say that this is a civil rights issue of the current generation, comparing the scenes of gay couples marrying at county clerk's offices to blacks breaking racial barriers in the 1960s. More state rulings in favor of gay marriage could be in the works in 2014. The thinking goes, if it can happen in ultra-conservative Utah, it can happen anywhere. Utah is home of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which still teaches that homosexuality is a sin, et cetera, et cetera. A federal judge in Michigan will hear testimony from experts in February before deciding whether to throw out the state's constitutional ban on same-sex marriage. 2 federal lawsuits in Virginia, including one being filed by the same legal team that challenged California's ban, are moving forward. It's just going to be a very, very busy year all around on the front of marriage equality. And that's just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to why this was the biggest gay year on record. Culturally, too. We'll get into that in the next part of this, after this break. Bill Press Show. Stick around. I'm Karl Frisch. We'll get into more about why this was the gayest year ever.
Seen on Free Speech TV and online on TawkrTV, this is The Bill Press Show.
A single ember that escapes from a wildfire can travel more than a mile. That single ember can ignite and destroy your home or even your community. You can't control where that ember will land, only what happens when it does. Get Fire Adapted now at fireadapted.org.
Columbine.
Virginia Tech.
Tucson.
Aurora.
Fort Hood. Oak Creek.
Newtown.
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 How many more?
How many more? How many more colleges? How many more classrooms?
How many more movie theaters?
How many more houses of faith?
How many more shopping malls?
How many more street corners?
How many more?
How many more?
Enough.
Enough.
Enough. Enough.
Demand a plan.
Right now. As a mom.
As a dad.
As a friend.
As a husband.
As a wife.
As an American.
As an American.
As an American.
As a human being.
For the children of Sandy Hook.
Demand a plan. No more lists of names. It's not too soon.
It's too late.
Now is the time.
Before we all know someone who loved someone on that list.
No more lists.
No more.
Who they might have been. No more.
If we had just done something yesterday. It's time.
We can do better than this.
We can do better than this.
It's time.
It's time.
It's time for our leaders to act.
Demand a plan. Right now.
Right now.
You! Demand it!
Enough.
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 None of us would want to be told we can't marry the person we love. As Americans, we believe in freedom. That's what I fought for as a Marine, and that's what we believe in as Republicans. Freedom means freedom for everyone. I didn't used to understand the importance of same-sex marriage, but after learning my brother was gay, I wanted the same rights for him. He was the best man at my wedding, and I want to be the best man at his. It's only fair that Calvin should have the freedom to marry the person he loves, too.
It's time for marriage.
At Earth Justice, we defend the environment in the courtroom. Join our fight. When you take a seat, you take a stand. Earth Justice, because the Earth needs a good lawyer.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. You know, but it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, you know, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
Seen on Free Speech TV and online on TawkrTV, this is The Bill Press Show.
Welcome back. This is the Bill Press Show. Connect with the show, BillPressShow.com. Don't forget to give us a call, 866-55-PRESS. That's 866-557-7377. If you're just joining us, last segment, it's 21 after, we were talking about the big strides that marriage equality made this year, 2013, the gayest year on record. But before we get back into that discussion, I have a special holiday message from the president that I want to play for you. Go ahead.
We hope all of you have a Mele Kalikimaka, and we hope you guys have a great new year as well. Thank you very much.
So if you're wondering what that means, it is not a weird Kenyan brainwashing technique. It is the fine way to say Merry Christmas to you. That was me spoken wording the famous holiday song. But it was as I said, it's the biggest, gayest, LGBT-iest year on record. As I said earlier, last year we only had 9 states with marriage equality. Now we've got 18 in the District of Columbia. A majority of U.S. senators, including 2 Republicans, now support marriage equality. In May, the Pew Research folks found that a majority of Americans support marriage equality for the first time. Culturally, we've had some huge changes as well. The Boy Scouts of America have changed their policy after decades of fighting it to allow LGBT or gay troops in their midst, even though they still have a ban on gay scout leaders. The Pope has come out and said that who is he to judge when it comes to gay people? I can only imagine how folks at the Catholic League felt when they heard that. The Salvation Army, which had a long history of being anti-gay, those people that ring the bells in front of the little red kettles out front of your pharmacy over the holidays, they have a non-discrimination policy now, not only for the people they serve, but also for their employees. So culturally, really big changes. And, you know, marriage seems to always overshadow all the other efforts that are being done for marriage equality in this country. You may not know that in 28 states, gay and lesbian, bisexual people can be fired simply because of who they love. And the number is even worse. I think it's 31 states where a trans person can be fired simply for who they are. And so there's been an effort in Congress to pass something called the Employment Non-Discrimination Act, also known as ENDA, for going on 20-some plus years now. And this year, the Senate passed it for the very first time in a huge lopsided vote, 61-30. I believe it had something like 7 Republicans voting for it. Very big deal. I believe the last time it was brought up for a vote, it received 48 votes in the Senate. And I don't think they could break a filibuster of it, so it didn't go anywhere. This time it passed, and of course, John Boehner is sitting on his orange little butt, so you're not likely to see it voted on anytime soon. Although, as things continue to march forward, it's only a matter of time. You know, last year, before the 2012 elections, there were no openly LGBT senators. Now there's 1, Tammy Baldwin from Wisconsin. There were only 4 members of Congress who were openly gay. Now there's 8. And you've got some big changes. Mark Michaud, who is a congressman from rural Maine and running for governor, he announced this year that he is gay, and it had a huge impact on the campaign for governor of Maine in that it didn't have any impact whatsoever. People were less concerned about his being gay than they were about what he might do for jobs and the economy. So it's helping him there. He could be the first openly gay governor elected. And I stress openly gay because we all know that there have been gay governors. They just haven't been open about it. In Maryland, Heather Mazur, a state representative, could be the first openly lesbian governor of Maryland. As I said, you've got a record number of members of Congress who are openly gay. In the great state of North Carolina, you've got a man named Marcus Brandon, who is the only openly gay legislator in the North Carolina legislature. He's African-American. He could become the first openly gay African-American elected to Congress. He's running for Mel Watt's seat. He's a really great guy. I've known him quite a long time. He could make a big impact there. So you can only imagine what kind of a mindset this places people whose entire lives have been built around fighting marriage equality and LGBT equality and the progress that's been made there. People like the Family Research Council and the National Organization for Marriage and everything else. It's why they end up grasping on to people like Phil Robertson of Duck Dynasty because they need culturally significant moments to try and gin up support for themselves. They've lost this fight. It's over for them. It's only a matter of time now. Remember when the Supreme Court finally looked again at miscegenation laws and allowed that every state would have to grant interracial marriages. I believe just over half the states in the country had legalized interracial marriages, while half had not. So we're getting pretty darn close to that magic tipping point number. But as I always remind my friends, marriage is only one issue. Again, 28 states where gay people can be fired just for being gay. 28 states where gay people can be denied a house or renting property because they're gay. 30 states where a same-sex couple cannot jointly adopt children together, or one of the spouses cannot adopt the other one's children. So there are issue after issue, not to mention that there are so many protections that people take for granted, whether it's bullying, whether it's employment non-discrimination, that LGBT people are going to be fighting for years to come. And, in 2014, we may see a big step forward if President Obama, who has been sitting on a executive order that would grant employment protection to LGBT people that work for federal contractors. It would be a big move, basically saying anybody who works for a federal contractor, any company that has business with the federal government cannot discriminate based on a person's sexual orientation. Would be absolutely huge. We're waiting to see that. So we could see that in the new year, as well as other things as well. We also saw big changes in athletics, where you had people like Tom Daley, the Olympic diver, come out this year towards the end of the year. You had Jason Collins, the NBA star, come out. You've had all sorts of athletes come forward and say, I'm gay and it's okay. And, thus making 2013 the gayest year ever. You don't have to take my word for it. Just pick up a newspaper. So I'm sure 2014 will be equally gay. But in the next segment, Lauren French, tax reporter from Politico. We'll have a great chat. Stick around.
This is the Bill Press Show.
So this is my computer.
This is your computer. Let's go on the internet.
Let's go. Click it.
Yes.
Okay.
I cursor in between the R and the E. Pressing down, I want you to just push the period.
She's gonna love me all over again.
That's it. Jamaica, here you go.
Here we go.
Good job.
Thank you. Thank you. And I did it by myself. Feel smarter.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
So, same time next week?
Well, of course. Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free tips to help you save, go to Feed the Pig.
All right. I know this isn't any fun to talk about, but we should. Okay. So who's going to do what?
I'll pack the dead batteries.
Great.
I'll only put what I don't need into a duffel bag.
Perfect. That's totally unhelpful.
No problem.
Meanwhile, I will try to comfort everyone by speaking in a calm voice.
And I'll try to get the generator going without any gas.
Oh, let's not forget the cell phones, which probably won't work.
Right.
And who is going to handle supplies?
I can forget to do a list for us.
Thanks, pal.
Well, I think we couldn't be any less prepared. I'm proud of you guys.
Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
Hey, thanks for stopping by. You know, I followed your character since the first episode. I'm a big fan. Big fan.
Thank you.
And listen, your storyline, it makes for incredible TV drama. Thing is, your drug use is very adult content. Too adult for the kids. So I'm gonna have to block you.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Well, have a good one.
You're a nice lady.
Connect with The Bill Press Show on Twitter. Follow us at BP Show and tweet using the hashtag WatchingBP. This is The Bill Press Show.
Welcome back to The Bill Press Show, filling in all morning. I'm Karl Frisch. You can follow me on Twitter as well, at Karl Frisch. That's KarlFrisch. Go ahead and follow me there and let us know what you think of the show. And if you have any questions or comments, we've got a great rest of the hour planned for you. 33 minutes after here in Washington, D.C. Lauren French, tax reporter from Politico, is joining us now. Lauren, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Merry Christmas, or day after Christmas, I should say.
Yeah, Merry Christmas.
Thanks for getting up. I don't know if you're on vacation, but it seems like much of Washington is empty, so we appreciate you joining us.
Glad to be here.
Now, one of the stories that you wrote recently for Politico Pro that I found fascinating was this discussion of what's going on with tax reform and how the GOP may have lost its nerve when it comes to tax reform. Do you want to walk us through? I mean, it's essentially been a staple talking point, not just of Republicans, but of the president as well, as kind of this thing, you know, the next big thing that we're going to tackle together is tax reform. But we really haven't made it very far, have we?
Well, you have to understand that the politics of tax reform are incredibly difficult to overcome. And despite good efforts from Senate Finance Chairman Max Baucus and House Ways and Means Chairman Dave Camp for pushing forward tax reform all year, it was likely never going to happen in the first place. That's because it's a hard vote. And to get to where you need to get to businesses on board and individuals on board, you have to strip out deductions and credits that most middle-income families really value, the mortgage interest deduction, the charitable deduction.
Which is why, I guess, during the 2012 election, Mitt Romney would campaign and say, oh, we're going to, you know, loosen up the tax code and we're going to get rid of all these deductions. And then he wouldn't tell you which deductions because he didn't want to be pinned down on unpopular moves.
Exactly, and he was talking about a cap at around 28%, which is a little bit more of a popular way, but even then, you might not get down to that 25% that Dave Camp, anyways, was looking for. So what you saw this fall is Obamacare came on the scene, and it was such a disastrous rollout that really took the Republicans' attention in the House, and they were focused so solely on Obamacare, and then you had the government shutdown and the debt ceiling. And that really sucked a lot of the oxygen out of Congress's, you know, echo chamber. And then tax reform was supposed to happen. And this is when this fall, this October, November period was when Dave Camp was going to roll something out and mark up a tax reform bill. But then all of these other things took over his party's attention. And the reporting that we did for Politico said that Republican leadership decided that the timing just really wasn't right for tax reform. They had a great issue in Obamacare to campaign on, to whack the White House on, and they weren't going to have another issue come in and kind of elbow that out, which, and you know, tax reform is a tough vote. And you not only that, but you have a bunch of Republicans in the House who didn't understand what Dave Camp was trying to do. He's educating members now. That's part of the feedback he heard from House leadership, from John Boehner and Eric Cantor, is that you have some Republican members who are asking, can we just go to a flat tax? Or,
oh, for Christ's sake.
You had calls to abolish the IRS, especially during that Tea Party targeting
So basically
scandal.
Crazy people saying we'd like to do something else. I mean, these are like ideas out of I'm just astonished that people would say, we like your idea of tax reform, but we were thinking more of just get rid of taxes.
Well, the Tea Party caucus in the House obviously is one of those who's very distrustful of the IRS. So when you're talking about taxes, for them, those two go hand in hand. So they wanted to know why you couldn't move to a flat tax, which is so much simpler, but it doesn't really work with credits and deductions. But then there's many Republicans and even Democrats in the House who just couldn't take the vote. It's really hard to take a vote against manufacturers, let's say, especially if your district is full
or
of
against
manufacturers.
Homeowners.
Getting rid of accelerated depreciation, mortgage interest, charitable deduction, and they were going to have to if they were going to get that rate down to 25%. So it's a tough vote to take for any member of Congress.
Well, it's a tough vote, especially for a Congress that's only taken, they've only passed 65 pieces of legislation this past year. The Do Nothing Congress passed 910.
Absolutely. I mean, this is not a Congress that was specific, or I guess especially efficient in their time. They didn't pass a lot of bills.
Well, they also didn't pass things that would, that had the support of like 90% of the American people and probably a solid majority in the House. So the idea that they would pass something that would be A, controversial with Americans, and B, controversial with members of Congress is not terribly surprising.
It's really not, which is all of these things, all of these pressures are the reasons that Eric Cantor and John Boehner sat down with Dave Camp and said, now's not the time. Maybe next year we could work on this, but then, of course, you have elections coming up for the midterm, so the timing's not right. But now it looks like this isn't going to happen at all because the White House nominated Max Baucus to be the ambassador to China. And it looks as if he will end up being confirmed. So you have him going to China, one of the champions of tax reform, Ron Wyden, who is likely going to replace him, very interested in tax reform, but very
much
different,
more progressive than
more progressive than Max Baucus, has a great relationship with Dave Camp as well. But it's really one of those things that it was Max Baucus and Dave Camp's bill. They're going to have to rework it. They're going to have to look at how to go forward from here.
Wow. I know a lot of progressives are very happy that Max Baucus is leaving and that Wyden is taking over. You've got another piece about the Senate finally voting for the top IRS position, kind of an offshoot of the same issue, after a fairly contentious year with the IRS being accused of all kinds of phony partisan political scandals. They finally have a new director for the first time in almost a year.
Yeah, John Koskanen, approved by the Senate last Friday by a wide vote, got a lot of support, but this is the first time, which is a big deal for the IRS, they're going to have a permanent leader since Doug Shulman left last September, so over a year now, which is good for the agency. It's not had a great year. It's been really troubled, and they need someone to go in and kind of set a new tone and work on some of those reforms that allowed the Tea Party targeting scandal to happen, and other things like tax fraud and tax collection. They have to implement Obamacare. So that has been the agency, and especially sources within the Treasury, tell me a big relief for everyone that John Koskanen's now approved, and he started on Monday.
Well, do you think one of the things that we heard at the beginning of December was that the IRS would be moving in to strengthen rules around 501c4s, 501c3s, and political activity? That's going to be a huge issue if they decide to tackle it. Do you think they're going to move in on that?
Well, they absolutely are. So they put out proposed regulations on that, and they have asked for comments from the political world and interested parties, because their proposed regulations were really quite surprising. They went really tough. They outlined a bunch of issues that are going to be considered political activity. So for 501c4s, you're allowed to engage in politics as long as it's not most of what you do. You have to be a mostly social welfare activity. But the lines of what was considered political activity were always really gray and very mushy, and there was no hard set line of what was politics. And they said, if you're doing get out the vote things, that is politics. If you have a candidate come speak at your event within 60 days of the election, that is politics. If you put out a pamphlet that really favors one party or one candidate, that is politics. Now, these aren't final. They're likely going to go in and loosen them up a little bit, because the IRS generally puts out really tough proposed regs, and then after getting feedback from everyone, we'll loosen them up a bit, especially that get out the vote effort one is something that has a lot of Democrats and Republicans concerned,
right? Because
get out the vote efforts important in elections, and if that's considered politics, a lot of groups really do focus on that.
Well, and a lot of groups that have been involved, like Rock the Vote or the League of Women Voters, that have been involved in registering and getting people to the polls for generations.
Exactly. So those are the things that people are talking about now. But this could change the way that 501c4s work. Now, of course, that as we've seen in campaign finance and campaigns and elections for years, whenever the government passes a new rule, these groups will find some way to get around it. That's, super PACs came because of the Supreme Court decision. So this is not campaign reform in the sense of this is going to get all dark money out of politics, no more anonymous donors or groups kind of influencing elections. That's not going to be the case, but there are going to be new rules, so you don't have confusions that led to the Tea Party targeting scandal at the IRS, where IRS employees were, this seems political to me, but necessarily it might not, based on these gray kind of mushy rules.
Right.
So it'll really just make those a lot more concrete, those rules for the IRS.
Well, Lauren French, tax reporter with Politico, I want to thank you for taking time this day after Christmas to join us and talk about your important work. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
You too. This is the Bill Press Show, 43 After. We'll be back in just a few.
On your radio, on TV, and online, this is the Bill Press Show.
It is possible to read the history of this country as one long struggle to extend the liberties established in our Constitution to everyone in America. In other words, who, according to our laws and culture, gets to be considered a person? The law creates legal personhood, and movements create law and change culture. So, how have the courts passed laws to shape our culture? That history goes way back before Citizens United. 1819, Dartmouth College versus Woodward, Supreme Court case, turned a corporate charter from a government-granted charter to a contract. This ruling gave corporations standing within the Constitution. 1886, Santa Clara County versus Southern Pacific Railroad. Though the court did not rule on corporate personhood, the decision was subsequently cited as a precedent to hold that a private corporation is entitled to the same 14th Amendment rights of due process and equal protection as human beings. This makes it impossible for us to make laws that treat local businesses any differently than giant multinational corporations, even if their business practices are deemed to be harmful to workers, the environment and communities, or if they have a history of violating the law. Hale versus Henkel, 1906. The court granted corporations the Fourth Amendment search and seizure protection. Dodge versus Ford Motor Company, 1919. The Michigan Supreme Court says the business corporation is organized and carried on primarily for the profit of the stockholders. Stockholder primacy is established. The purpose of the corporation, according to the court, is no longer to serve the public good, as it had been. It is now to maximize profit for shareholders above all else. Pennsylvania Coal Company versus Mahon, 1922. Corporations get the Fifth Amendment takings clause, meaning If you pass a regulation that impacts a corporation's ability to make a profit, that is deemed a taking, and they can sue for the right to future profits lost. This creates a chilling effect, and local and state governments become much more hesitant to pass laws in the public interest for fear that corporations can claim loss of potential profits that cities and states will be on the hook to pay. Buckley versus Vallejo, 1976. The Supreme Court rules that spending money to influence elections is protected under the First Amendment, in effect saying that money is speech. Citizens United versus Federal Election Commission, 2010.
Today, the Supreme Court of Chief Justice John Roberts declared that because of the alchemy of its 19th century predecessors in deciding that corporations had all the rights of people, any restrictions on how these corporate beings spend their money on political advertising are unconstitutional.
The court's ruling threatens to undermine the integrity of elected institutions across the nation. It's a rejection of the common sense of the American people.
On TV and online, this is The Bill Press Show.
Welcome back to The Bill Press Show, filling in all morning. I'm Karl Frisch. More about me at karlfrisch.com. Earlier in the show, we were talking a bit about the Catholic Church and the Pope's new tone, especially over his holiday services. We've got some audio from Cardinal Timothy Dolan up in New York, a man who I generally regard as human evil. But he had some interesting words to say, nonetheless. Let's hear some of the audio. Let's hear the clip about what he thinks of the Pope.
What we're after was a good pastor with a track record of solid administration, but fatherly, warm, tender care for the sheep, for his people. And boy, we got that on steroids with Pope Francis. He's the world's parish priest.
I agree that they got somebody who is setting a different tone and is warm. And next to Timothy Dolan, a cadaver would seem warm. No love lost for me with the Cardinal, who covered for abusers and everything else. But he is right. This Pope is setting a different tone, and even if there have not been major changes in the church thus far, there's been a lot of verbal cues that changes may be coming. This is Cardinal Dolan talking about how 2014 may be a year for women within the church.
He's reminded of that we got a pretty good record, but then he said we need even to do better. And I would think that in this new year, we're probably going to see some women get some major positions within the Holy See.
Which would be huge. And it'd be the kind of changes, there are all kinds of different organizations at the Vatican, and we're seeing slow changes being made there, with some of the more conservative elements being pushed out in favor of more progressive ones. So those are the kinds of changes I like to see backing up the rhetoric. I've been cautiously optimistic with this Pope. I'm not one that usually falls for religious PR or spin. I like to see, when the Pope came out and said that who is he to judge gay people, my reaction was not, oh, what a nice thing initially. My reaction was, you're the Pope. Popes are used to judging gay people. So it's nice to see that he's slowly moving the ship. The Catholic Church is like a giant tanker. You can't turn a giant tanker around overnight. And even if you've got bigots like Timothy Dolan here in the U.S., they've got no choice but to follow the lead of the pontiff. So hopefully, in 2014, we will see more women taking leadership positions in the church. Maybe, and this is just a dream, maybe they'll get rid of the requirement for abstinence in the priesthood. Maybe they'll allow women in the priesthood. Maybe they'll stop saying that being gay is sin, and maybe they'll get out of the abortion game altogether. Those would be all great changes that the Catholic Church could make. But then again, what would Mr. Donahue do at the Catholic League if he didn't have those issues to bat around and bash politicians with from his perch as a talking head? But we'll see. The church moves very slowly, and it could be years before any of these changes actually take root. But I'm hopeful, and if his sermon for the holidays was any indication, this path may be a lot shorter than we originally anticipated. This is the Bill Press Show. Stick around. Top of the next hour, we're talking to my good friend Tina Dupuy, the syndicated columnist. You won't want to miss it. She's hilarious.
Connect with The Bill Press Show on Twitter. Follow us at BP Show and tweet using the hashtag WatchingBP. This is The Bill Press Show.
In the early 20th century, the war to end all wars didn't end war at all. It stoked the fires of change. A traumatized world was ripe for change. The world was ready for modernism. Modernists wanted to forget history, or at least reinterpret it. More than just a style, modernism applied to virtually all forms of creative expression. Innovative artists like Picasso, Escher, Dali, they all started looking at their world differently. Other artists tried painting light itself. These were the Impressionists. Surrealists went a bit further. We had entered the age of the isms. Cubism, symbolism, futurism, constructivism. All these new modern ways of looking at the world blew people away. When it came to architecture, modernists were intrigued by emerging technology. Concrete, glass and steel featured heavily in their buildings. Modernists believed that they could design a better society. Ornamental indulgence was considered a frivolous waste of effort. They thought function should always dictate form, and that mankind's intelligence, creativity and capability for radical thinking should be celebrated. Take the Russian inventor Georgy Krutikov. He suggested an idea for a city held aloft by electrical currents. This at a time when there was barely enough wattage to keep the lights on. Not everything they designed was a resounding success. But you could argue modernism was the single most influential movement of the 20th century. From house music to housewares, tables and chairs to graphic design, all have been created by the aesthetics and ideas of modernism.
A single ember that escapes from a wildfire can travel more than a mile. That single ember can ignite and destroy your home or even your community. You can't control where that ember will land, only what happens when it does. Get Fire Adapted now at fireadapted.org.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
Connect with The Bill Press Show on Twitter. Follow us at BP Show and tweet using the hashtag WatchingBP. This is The Bill Press Show.
Welcome back to The Bill Press Show. Filling in for Bill, I'm Karl Frisch as we round out this second hour of the show. As things were cooling off just before the winter break, they'd been heated up by a Michigan law that was passed that folks have been calling the rape insurance law. Essentially saying that private insurers could not offer abortion coverage in their plans, and that women would have to get special abortion coverage plans if they wanted to have an abortion. So you'd have to pre-plan your rapes and make sure that you have insurance just on the off chance that you got pregnant from something that horrible. Just an absolutely arcane, backwards law. But not the first time that we've seen such a piece of legislation, sadly, in this country. this type of an abortion restriction, and this is a great piece that I picked up from the AP. I believe it's from the AP at least, and from Think Progress rather. You would think they're the AP with how accurate they are. This type of abortion restrictions have already been advancing in private insurance markets. North Dakota first banned private insurance coverage of abortion in 1979. Idaho, Kentucky, and Missouri placed restrictions on private abortion coverage in the 1980s. None has an exception for rape victims. This is, quite sad and quite scary, but not unprecedented. And with the passage of the Affordable Care Act, with established state-run private insurance marketplaces, abortion opponents saw a new opportunity to restrict insurance coverage. 23 states rushed to ban their new marketplaces from offering any plans that include abortion coverage, and several decided to go even further, passing laws that restrict abortion coverage in the entire private market. Since 2011, Kansas, Nebraska, Oklahoma, and Utah have all enacted sweeping restrictions for women purchasing private insurance. And here's the thing I want to stress. We're talking about private insurance plans. We're not talking about a plan provided by the government. We're not talking about a plan provided by an employer. We're talking about people going into the free market and purchasing insurance, and them dictating that women cannot have abortions covered by those plans. I think we should outlaw coverage of Viagra and Cialis in those states, because the last thing any of those men deserve is to be having any kind of sexual fun if they want to get involved in ladies' personal health decisions. Absolutely sick. And they did this in the run-up to the holidays, no less. So the other thing to consider is that there is no such thing as abortion coverage. So when they outlaw these things, you can't go out and just buy abortion coverage. It's not something that is available in the marketplace. Sick and sad. But in the next hour, as I said earlier, we're going to be talking to Tina Dupuy at the top of the hour, good friend of the show, always hilarious, syndicated columnist. Stick around. We'll be back after this.
This is the Bill Press Show. Broadcasting around the nation, on your radio, on your TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
Welcome back. This is The Bill Press Show. All morning, I'm Karl Frisch, filling in for Bill, who is on a well-deserved holiday break. You can find more about me at karlfrisch.com. Also follow me on Twitter and Facebook at Karl Frisch. Joining us now, my good friend, the syndicated columnist from her holiday bunker in New York City, Tina Dupuy. Tina, thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Karl.
Good morning. Merry Christmas to you. On this first day post-war on Christmas.
Yes, this is, we'll call this Armistice Day.
Armistice Day from the War on Christmas, indeed, which means that we have approximately 6 months until the War on Christmas picks back up. Although, it's getting earlier and earlier every year, this War on Christmas. Bill O'Reilly claims that they've won the War on Christmas, and so there's no need to go back to it again. What do you make of that?
I think that we should hold him to that. I think that once he says something, we should hold him to that. And maybe fact-check him when he declares it.
Fact-checking works with O'Reilly. I mean,
it really does. No, they're very sensitive over there.
On the rare moments when he's been wrong and been corrected, he will really just suck it up and say that he's been wrong.
Absolutely. Very contrite, humble man. Absolutely.
So your column this week, you've got a 2013 holiday wish list. Let's unpack it for folks. What's first on your list?
Well, I think the first thing that we need to do is we need to end the war on Christmas. I think that this is really important because the 8 weeks that we partition off to celebrate the historically questionable day of Christ's birth, I just think that it would be so much different if saying Happy Holidays, a contraction of Holy Days, instead of Merry Christmas.
Which, by the way, is more inclusive of all the other Christian holidays around Christmas, right? I mean, there are a number of Christian special moments in Christianity that happen around Christmas, so holidays being a contraction of holy days is kind of more special than just singling out one day. Right.
But I really believe like this whole idea that there is someone who's just trying to kill Christmas, someone who wants to take away Christmas from
There's a Grinch, Tina.
Christians. Yes,
he stole it.
That this is exactly that this is really a straw man in a Santa hat. Like this, there's actually none of these people who exist. And here's having just we're like less than 24 hours away from the actual day of Christmas. I would like to just air a grievance here. For the last 8 weeks, I have heard this war on Christmas and how the secularists are trying to like take it away, and we can't say Christ anymore, and they freak out about spelling it, Xmas, which is actually the actually means Christ, or in Greek the X. So they're historically inaccurate yet vehement that somehow there are.
I'm pretty sure X stands for Satan.
Peoples. I'm sure you're correct in that, because why not? Why not just make things up? So here's my thing. We have been dealing with this war on Christmas, and it's been waging strong. And then on the actual day of Christmas, Christians are going to the movies and, wait for it, Chinese food restaurants. This is not okay. You fight over the war on Christmas. You wage this battle all year round, so you can stay home and or go to church. You don't go and complain about how this holiday is under siege and then celebrate it like a secularist.
Now, do you think that the white, lily white baby Jesus has tears that people are not giving him his due? I'm
almost positive of it. I put this on my Facebook page. There was a billboard that said, I miss hearing Christmas, and then it was a quote from Jesus.
Right, because he said that.
You're really just making it up as you go along.
And wouldn't they have just said happy birthday to him?
I'm okay. Like I'm a peacemaker here, right? I want everyone to be happy, and and Christmas used to be a really fantastic time of eating Chinese food and going to the movies. And the movies were not debuting on December 25th, but it also wasn't crowded. There were like 4 people in the movie theater on Christmas Day growing up, and it was and then there was one restaurant open in town, and it was a Chinese food restaurant, and now that's like a thing that Christians are doing to celebrate Christmas, and I think it's unfair. I think you can't have it both ways. You either wage the war on Christmas and then go to church on Christmas Day, or you go to a Chinese food restaurant. I just think doing both is really disingenuous.
Well, the thing that's always been crazy to me is this idea that Christmas is people are trying to change Christmas, when Christmas has evolved a great deal over the millennia.
Right. Well, there's an adage that says that a tradition that doesn't change is a dead tradition. It's a paradox.
Right.
And so, in order for when I remember there was very briefly, this really didn't sell well, that the commercialization of Christmas was more offensive to the idea of of Christ, and because he was not a fan of rich people. Strangely enough, the first person to really point this out, and this is very anti-American, say the Christianity strain that we have in this country is really the prosperity gospel,
which is just bonkers to the rest of the world's Christian denominations.
Right, it's really funny, but my favorite person to kind of come out about this concept was, and I'm not making this up, James Baker. After he went to prison for embezzlement for 5 years, this is James Baker,
Tammy Faye's ex-husband.
Tammy Faye Baker, correct. So he went to prison for 5 years, and while in prison, he decided for the first time, this is a famous, iconic televangelist, from the 1980s. When he went to prison in the late 80s, 1990s, he actually read the Bible, and so he wrote a book, and the title was "I Was Wrong," which I thought was a fantastic way to.
It wasn't "I was wrong." Stories.
No, it
from
was
the
"I was
inside
wrong."
of the,
Period. Right, exactly.
Yeah.
I was wrong. Period. And the beginning of the book, it says, I was able for the first time in prison to read the Bible, and it turns out he doesn't have a lot of good things to say about rich people. And and it was like it's like this shot, right? This revelation. It's like Plato's Republic. The escaped prisoner comes back and is like, no, there's more than just dancing shadows on this cave wall. And then the other prisoners, of course, want to kill him. It's fascinating that the commercialization of Christmas is no longer even an issue.
It's not been an issue, I think, since 1994, when these economic titans finally built the world's largest needle. So camels can get through that with no problem.
Right.
The head of that needle. Rich people will have no problem either.
It's funny.
I know.
It's pretty good.
So what else is on your list? You've got stop targeting doctors in Syria.
Yeah, this is kind of not talked about, but as this civil war in Syria has been raging for over 2 years now, and we, as a country or as a world, we're kind of shocked to see these images of and this time we actually had proof and images of chemical weapons. But what both sides have been doing as kind of a tactic in this war, they've been targeting hospitals and doctors. The government has made it in Syria has made it illegal to actually give medical aid to the rebels, and so according to a UN report, there have been more than 100 doctors that have been killed in Syria, and 600 have been jailed. Most recently, there was a British surgeon, Dr. Abbas Khan, who had been in prison in Syria for a year, was about to be released, and then his family has been told that he died in prison under suspicious
Obamacare.
They've actually, exactly.
So have things gotten better since they've come to the table and turned over their chemical weapons and everything else?
Better for whom?
Better for the doctors,
not really.
I mean,
no. This is a tactic in this war. Actually attacking hospitals and making sure that people who are wounded and sick cannot get any kind of medical care has just been a way to wage this really brutal war. That's like it's pretty egregious, and this is a list of things that just make the world a better place. War is horrible as it is, but this is particularly an awful way to wage it, especially when you have 100 doctors who have lost their lives just for trying to do their jobs.
It's absolutely insanity. I mean, these are it used to be that doctors and medical professionals were given safe harbor. That you didn't attack them, specifically carved out in the rules of war. You wouldn't go after folks that were helping to save lives. Positively frightening, but not surprising given that this is a regime that would use chemical weapons on its own people. So, frightening nonetheless.
Right, and getting aid, daily shipments from Iran with the aid of Iraq. It's not a pretty story.
Well, and the third item on your list is something I don't think we're ever going to be able to tackle with Fox News still on the air. It's curb reporting conspiracy theories as valid opinions.
Right, you'll see this a lot where, and especially, and this is very true of Obamacare coverage, where you'll have a story about Obamacare and then you'll have, a quote from someone who says that this is socialized medicine, which is actually not true. And you don't know, like socialized medicine is actually Medicare, not Obamacare. Obamacare is private medical, it's basically regulating the insurance companies and mandating that everyone get covered by private insurance. But you see this a lot, and then it kind of gets validated, right? So you think that because it's being covered in a newspaper, this, or that death panels or whatever, it doesn't get corrected because it's someone's opinion. It's an uninformed opinion or even a conspiracy theory. It's covered as valid and not correct.
Well, you also see these studies that say that when you cover, and I'll just say this before we take a break, and hopefully you can stick around and chat a little bit more about your list. But these studies that say even when you cover things in a rebutting fashion, it still sows the seeds of misinformation. So positively frightening. Katie Dupuy, hopefully you can stick around with us. And we'll be back with more of your holiday list after this. Stick around, the Bill Press Show all morning. I'm Karl Frisch. We'll be back.
Seen on Free Speech TV and online on TawkrTV. This is the Bill Press Show. Seen on Free Speech TV and online on TawkrTV. This is the Bill Press Show.
Welcome back, Bill Press Show. All morning, I'm Karl Frisch filling in for Bill. This Thursday, December 26th, the day after Christmas. If you're just joining us, we're talking to Tina Dupuy, good friend, syndicated columnist. Tina, thanks for sticking around with us.
Anything for you, Karl.
I appreciate it. And if you're on your computer, go follow Tina on Twitter at Tina Dupuy and on Facebook, and go to our website, tinadupuy.com, and all the other stuff. So you've got this holiday wish list. Number 4 on your list is Made in America, massacres in South Sudan.
Right. We arm the world. We arm the children. When we hear about these massacres going on in places like South Sudan, that is more than likely. We lead the world in not only arming our own citizens, but exporting these. So the last time we have data on this was 2011, and in the global arms market, American sales topped out at $85.3 billion.
Which is why it really is. So, it really is.
I'm sorry, $66 billion for just us, but 85 for the rest of the world. So we own, that's a vast majority of arms sales are American made.
Well, and it's one reason why the NRA is, an arms lobbyist as opposed to a gun rights organization. I mean, there's a lot of money at stake here.
Absolutely, and it's not, and they stopped being for the individual rights a really long time ago, and now, because especially for the specific laws that they have lobbied for, they have in 2005 they lobbied for and got basically blanket immunity. So if you have a gun that blows up in your face, or you get shot by someone with a gun, you cannot sue the gun industry. They are completely immune.
Even if they know,
to that weapon.
Even if they knew the gun was going to blow up, you can't sue them.
Even if they on purpose made a faulty weapon just because of their own incompetence or malicious intent, they cannot be sued.
Another good success story of the Bush administration. Another good success story of the Bush administration.
It is the golden era of arms dealing. Because of the blanket immunity that they have. There is no other industry, by the way, that has that kind of immunity. There's no other industry that, if they make a faulty product,
Well, that's the crazy thing, is that people assume that because more guns are being sold now than ever, that more people are buying guns. It's not true. There's actually fewer people buying guns. The people that are buying them just buy more.
Correct. It's fewer Americans that actually are armed. They're just the people who are armed have more arms. They have arsenals instead of a gun. So there's not there are fewer and fewer people who just own one gun. They are stockpiling because they have been listening to conspiracy theories about how we're going to come take your guns.
Right.
But legally, this industry has enjoyed record profits. They're able to dump their money in places like the NRA, who tells their members conspiracy theories about how, if there's I'm using air quotes, a liberal who gets put in the White House, that means that they have to go out and buy bullets, and
right. It immediately means
a weird
go fund our arms dealers and double up your memberships. Tina Dupuy, a wonderful piece as always, ends with number 6, end affluenza, and call it Kim Jong-un's disease. Tina, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Karl.
Alrighty, this is the Bill Press Show. When we come back, we'll be joined by national affairs reporter for Yahoo News, Liz Goodwin. Stick around.
This is the Bill Press Show. Radio, on TV, and online. This is the Bill Press Show.
Welcome back to Bill Press Show 33 after. Karl Frisch here, filling in for Bill all morning. If you're watching our good friends at Morning Joe, they've got some golfer named Bubba Watson on. Who would have thought I'd live to see the day that a golfer would be named Bubba Watson? And he won the Masters. But we've got something better for you. We've got national affairs reporter from Yahoo News, good friend of the show, Liz Goodwin. Liz, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas. I hope you had a happy holiday and that we didn't get you up too terribly early this day after the holiday.
Oh, no. I'm not even in a real bedroom. I'm at my parents' house, so I would have been up anyway.
Excellent. So you had a good piece before the holiday about deportations dropping 10% last year, which accounted for like a 6-year low.
Yep.
And I'm interested to know, I mean, this is a president who, during his reelection talked about being, the president who deported more people than anybody else. Immigration rights folks call him the deporter-in-chief.
Yep.
Where do we stand with immigration reform?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. The immigration activist types have been flooding Boehner's lines for the past 2 weeks or so, because it's up to him if the House is ever going to vote on anything. And he says, they've been saying from the beginning that they don't want to vote on this Senate bill that, if you remember, passed a while back with bipartisan support, because they want to do things piece by piece. They don't want this big comprehensive bill, which is how immigration folks have been kind of trying to get it passed for 10 years or so, ever since Bush. It's always been referred to as comprehensive immigration reform, comprehensive blah blah blah, to kind of put in the things that Republicans like and bundle them with the things that more liberal folks like, and try to get that through as one big chunk. So
the thinking being that the House would then pass more walls, more moats with alligators, electrified jellyfish, whatever, and then say, oops, we forgot about the path to citizenship.
Exactly, yeah. And I think, I actually think there's, and liberal activists agree that there are enough Republicans in the House who want some kind of path, and that's not really the problem anymore. It's not so much are undocumented immigrants going to get some kind of path to legalization. It's more dealing with future flows. How many low-skilled immigrants do we want in the future? How many, and also high-skilled immigration. A lot of the battle has shifted to what would happen in the future. How would we control immigration going forward? How much labor do we need? Could we bring in low-skilled workers and have them kind of be free agents, or should they be tied to certain employers?
And we've seen that Zuckerberg group, the Forward group, spending a lot of time on television talking about the need for expanding the number of expert immigrants that can immigrate.
Yeah, Silicon Valley's actually been pretty vocal throughout this whole thing about wanting more freedom to bring in high-skilled immigrants. And that's something I think is kind of interesting, because that can sort of lead to conflict with Democrats, especially labor unions. This idea of, well, okay, we don't want businesses to have such power to bring in labor that it undercuts labor unions' ability to negotiate and their power. And that's actually what killed immigration reform back in 2006, is enough Democrats defected that it couldn't pass.
Well, I'm interested to know, one thing that's occurred to me as this discussion has been going on for years now, especially after the 2012 election, when there was like the soul searching in the Republican Party. They did the postmortem autopsy. They discovered, oh my gosh, there's more and more Americans of Hispanic descent every year. We've got to get better on things like immigration reform. The notion that all they have to do to start winning Hispanic votes is pass immigration reform, after the horrible debate that's been had over immigration reform, where it's been like, okay, Republicans are going to pass immigration reform, but not before they disparage immigrants in every possible way they can think of, and make the path to citizenship as difficult as possible, and talk about how horrible these people who are illegally immigrating are. It's basically like ruining whatever political upside there could possibly be to immigration reform for Republicans.
Well, yeah, that's interesting because I do think a lot of times the how we talk about Bush gets really simplified to, yeah, he did well with Hispanics because he supported immigration reform, but if you remember, like, how he talked about the issue,
right?
Like, he just had a certain warmth to him and a welcoming way.
I mean, that was basically compassionate conservatism was almost entirely confined to immigration.
Right, exactly, but that was his moment, that was his issue, and you don't hear that. I mean, I can't think of a House Republican who sounds like that.
Well, even if you remove the outspoken people like Steve King saying that people have watermelon-sized calves or whatever he said, and all the other things, these compromise efforts to get those crazy people on board, where it's like, okay, but the wall, we're going to put another 10 feet on the wall, and we're going to electrify the fence, and we're going to say that you can be a citizen, but you have to be here for 25 years and pay a $500,000 tax penalty, and not only that, but you have to speak perfect English with a Midwestern accent, and so on. And it's just like, you're basically, it's like when you're a little kid and you're setting up the rules to a game and you really don't want the girls to play with you. So you say, you make rules that nobody could possibly beat you in, It doesn't make the person that you're inviting to play the game want to play with you.
Right, but I do think one interesting thing, though, is you don't see now so much of that in the grassroots. Because you definitely, back in 05, 06, when people started to realize, oh my goodness, something really might pass, you would see all these kind of proto-Tea Party type groups kind of going to the border. If you remember, like the Minutemen movement, and people really just like freaked out, and they sent a really strong message to the base that, no way, these people aren't welcome, blah, blah, blah. And you really don't see that this time around, and you haven't, even when it passed in the Senate and looked a lot more, looked like there was a lot of momentum behind it. You didn't see these big rallies against immigration reform, and I don't know if that's, a factor of the economy, or if that just...
Well, we saw polling that showed a change in the Republican base on immigration immediately after the election, because there was like this assumption among Republicans in the base that, okay, to win in the future, we just have to be pro-immigration reform. We'll do that. We'll be pro-immigration reform.
Right.
It was like a tactical position
strategy
change that they had. But that being said, being in favor of immigration reform alone, and that's kind of my central thesis here, is not sufficient enough to win you the Hispanic vote.
And that's what, like, Steve King is saying, honestly. A lot of the Republicans who are suspicious of this are saying, we're just going to pass, a program that leads to what we think will be economic ruin, and we're not actually going to win any votes, because if you look at what your average Latino voter believes, it way more lines up with Democrats than Republicans, and passing this isn't going to change that.
Well, then you also have the conservatives who tried out the old baloney that, if we just articulate our conservative social values to Hispanics, they'll come along with us. But then if you look at the polling, Hispanic Americans are more in favor of marriage equality than white Americans. They're more in favor of abortion access and choice than white Americans. They're actually more socially liberal, despite being more religious, than white Americans or African Americans.
Yep. Yeah. And I think the Republicans have a point on that.
Well, and part of it that's interesting to me is not just about Republicans winning the Hispanic vote, and hopefully you can stick around with us in the next segment. Would you mind?
Oh, not at all.
Because I think what's also at play here is how it impacts the way that other people view Republicans. If you're just joining us, we're talking to Liz Goodwin from Yahoo News, and we'll stick around with her after this break. Bill Press Show. I'm Karl Frisch. Stick around.
Seen on Free Speech TV and online on TawkrTV. This is the Bill Press Show.
morning. I've been Karl Frisch. It's 46 after. More about me at karlfrisch.com. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter and Facebook. If you're just joining us, we're talking to Liz Goodwin, friend of the show and national affairs reporter from Yahoo News. Liz, thanks for sticking around.
Yeah, thank you.
So before the break, we were talking about immigration reform and the complexities of using it as an issue that Republicans can then use to get Hispanic Americans to vote for them. One of the things that occurs to me, because if you look at, let's say, marriage equality, for example, nobody in their right mind would say that if Republicans turned around today and became in favor of marriage equality, that they'd win a sizable portion of a very small gay vote, right?
Right.
But what they would do, there are independents and women in this country that look at people who are against marriage equality as some kind of bizarre space alien. Like, you're old, you're stodgy, you're crazy, and I can't vote for you. They're not gay themselves, but being on the wrong side of those kinds of cultural issues affects the way that independents and certain women voters look at them. Immigration is very similar. Especially with young voters who haven't picked a side of the aisle to be on. It's a no-brainer to be in favor of a path to citizenship. So when they see Republicans laboring over immigration reform to get it done, they're not only hurting themselves with potential Hispanic Americans who might vote for them, but they're also hurting themselves with young voters who think this is a no-brainer.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. Another issue that I kind of wonder about for next year is the Affordable Care Act, obviously. And that also really affects Hispanic voters as well, because I think it's like a third of people who aren't insured right now and aren't elderly are Latino.
Right.
So it'll be interesting to see if that ends up kind of pushing Hispanic voters specifically towards Democrats, sort of no matter what happens on immigration, because that's the kind of issue that actually affects your pocketbook.
Well, and I had seen somewhere that the number of people that are, disproportionately helped by the Affordable Care Act because of a lack of access was in the neighborhood of like 40% for these emerging demographics that everybody was talking about in 2012, young people, Hispanics, African Americans, etc., these growing parts of our population. So it's kind of one of those choices that they're in between hurting now or hurting later. They can change on some issues now and hurt now as they lose part of their base, which we're seeing, in these Republican primaries over the Affordable Care Act. Or they can hurt later by just ignoring all of the problems that face them as a party and waiting for these demographic changes to just overtake the political system.
Right, yeah. And it's, one kind of issue on the Obama administration side with this is I haven't checked lately, actually, but for a while I was checking their Spanish language healthcare.gov site like every day to see if it was up, and it wasn't the last time I checked. So that's not even so much a political issue. It's like an issue for Spanish speakers who want to get signed up, and since they are like a younger, healthier, uninsured group, they really need them to sign up.
Well, and if 30% of the market is of that community, and we know that, I guess, on Monday, 2 million people visited healthcare.gov, we can only imagine what, extrapolating what that would mean for folks who need coverage but, may not speak English.
Right, prefer to do it in Spanish for whatever reason.
Now, you also had a piece, and I just want to close with this. You have a piece about the fast food strikes, and one of the stories that got me chuckling yesterday on Christmas was the McDonald's employee website finally being shut down after it was discovered that they were telling people how to eat healthily and that they were telling people not to eat French fries and hamburgers.
That website has just been the gift that keeps on giving, because that's also the same site where, they directed people. They said, oh, do you work for us? Like, are you having trouble feeding yourself?
Right.
Here's how you sign up for food stamps, and on their own.
And then the accounting issue with not telling, expecting them to pay $10 a month for health insurance. And
oh yeah, it's really incredible. I don't know which reporter first found that, website and started publicizing it. But I'm surprised it's taken them this long to shut it down, because it's just been, I mean, it's incredible.
And for a multi-billion-dollar corporation, it's just like, how?
Right.
How?
Yeah. Yeah, I think, I mean, part of it might be this whole franchising issue, I think, makes them feel very kind of invulnerable. Sort of like, oh, we're not doing anything, it's all franchises. But when you have the corporation's website, that's sort of one really concrete thing people can point to and say, well, this is definitely you guys, you know, this isn't some rogue franchise owner.
It reminds me of a lot of the early missteps that Walmart had with their slogans and with their mascot being a smiley face, and just making it really easy to attack them as a corporation through artful use of creative license.
Right.
Liz Goodwin, always a pleasure, national affairs reporter with Yahoo News. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Alrighty, this is the Bill Press Show, and when we come back, it's not quite a parting shot, it's more of a Karl shot. So stick around.
Seen on Free Speech TV and online on TawkrTV, this is the Bill Press Show. on your radio, on TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
Welcome back to this final segment of The Bill Press Show, 56 After. It's been a delight. My name's Karl Frisch, guest hosting for Bill while he's on vacation for this holiday. You can always find more about me and sign up for my email list at karlfrisch.com. That's KarlFrisch. And don't forget to follow me on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and MySpace and all the other social media programs out there. Special thanks to everybody here at the Bill Press Show for making these last 3 hours a delight despite the hour of day. And as a sort of a riff on Bill's parting shot, I just want to remind folks, 2014 is going to be an election year, as will 2016 and 2018 after that. And Republicans are on the slow demographic death march. And while they may have good moments, they may have good elections in the short term. They may pick up seats in the Senate in 2014. They may not lose anything in the House. But it's only a matter of time before these demographics catch up with them. They have no shot at winning the presidency right now unless Democrats absolutely fumble it in 2016. And a lot has to change for them in order for them to be competitive in that way. But that being said, we cannot take for granted the successes that we've had or the advantages that we are building. We have to fight just as hard. I always liken Republicans versus Democrats as a knife fight. And a Republican will stab you with their knife, and then when you fall down, they'll step on your neck and break it, and then they'll walk away and laugh. And a Democrat will stab you on accident and then help you into the back of their car to get you to the hospital and then put it on their insurance. We've got to fight just as hard and just as nasty as they do. And if we can do that, we can exile them to permanent minority status. Thanks a lot. Bill Press Show. We'll be back tomorrow.
This is the Bill Press Show.